Our next speaker is Mr. V. Raju. He is the Chief Operations Officer at i3PL India Pvt Ltd. Mr. Raju brings 42 years of experience in the strategic planning, business development, 3PL warehousing and port, CFS, and terminal operations. He has worked with major logistics companies, including DHL, Adani Logistics, and All Cargo. Currently at i3PL, he heads the contract logistics and 3PL segments and has led logistics assignments across the Middle East and Africa. He was honored with the Transformative Leadership Award in 2019 and Lifetime Achievement Award in 2023. Today, he will delve into the topic of crisis response and how chemical manufacturers are navigating shipping disruptions and logistical hurdles. Welcome, sir. Over to you.
Thanks, ma'am, and a very good afternoon to all the people out here, to the audience who are also connected to this forum. Before I begin, my sincere thanks to the organizers, to the Chemical Today world, and also to all the well-wishers of this audience. Good afternoon to fellow panelists as well, and I presume this is going to be a very interesting supply chain conference. Let's focus on this ever-changing world, the geopolitical scenario out there in this middle, which we are encountering on a day-to-day basis. February 2026, the world changes totally. The economic order changes totally. The supplies to different nations, the supplies to across the world changes totally. Everyone is sitting at the corners and sitting at the edges of the seat, not knowing exactly as to what is going to be the situation tomorrow. The factory managers, the organizational chiefs, the plant heads, etc., are keeping their fingers crossed, because what really turns out in the next 15 to 20 days really is havoc across the world. The world changes. We all have learned, we all know, we have read about something called as the VUCA world, which is a volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, uncertain world totally. But here it is, the world unveiling in front of you, where everything changes with a single strike, with a single blast, with a single attack on countries in between them. Mine turns back to the COVID-19 scenario. COVID scenario, as well as the Houthi rebels. Why? Because the anatomy of the present problem starts from those days and how we encountered them. The Houthi rebels in the Red Sea is very similar to what the Strait of Hormuz is today. The COVID phenomena is very similar to what happened or what is happening even now across the oceans and across countries, where their petrochemical industries, where the petrochemical organizations, where the factories, where the petrol fields, etc., have been hammered and damaged by severe bombing and severe missile attack. What happens now? What are the impediments which each industry and in turn even the logistic service providers are unable to really focus upon? The vessel availability, the container ships which carry huge chunk of cargo, import cargo, or even the export cargo from different countries to Southeast Asia and the Asian countries, are in a limbo. You do not know when this container is going to reach your country. Plants and industries do not know whether they will ultimately get these containers. It's a havoc out there. You're not sure about the vessel, which route it will be taking, because things are undecided and very, very flexible and liquid in situation. Now, a giant container carrier, remember that carrying, let's say, about 5,000 to 8,000 containers on the ship, is unable to focus, unable to tell you where exactly and when it is going to reach, let's say, a port of Mundra or a port of Nhava Sheva, simply because you're not sure whether you will be allowed to sail through Strait of Hormuz, because it's blocked. A channel through which every day, literally we used to read till Feb, 200 ships at the bare minimum used to cross peacefully and used to cross quickly. Today, the situation is such that hardly 8 to 9 ships, that too with special permissions taken from Iran and taken from US, passes through, but not sure what cargo it is going to contain, keeping the responders closed for nighttime sailing so that there is no untoward incident happening in the canal. At the same time, if at all the vessels decide to go through, they take a detour across the Cape of Good Hope. What happens really? The transit times increased by 15 to 20 days at the bare minimum. Vessel availability, as I said, and these are specialized ships, the container vessels, the gas carriers, and the oil tankers. Believe me, the freight rates for each of these containers are so high, and these are not easily available in the market. And these are charter ships, many of them carrying cargo on a special charter, on an agreement between nations. And that's where the problem lies. Now, these type of vessels not being available in the market, even for big importers like India, China, and the rest of the countries, you are in a real problem. You cannot plan your production, because in India, there was a time, believe me, friends, when I traveled from Gujarat to Mumbai, and en route, even the local restaurants did not have gas to help you get even tea or even snacks during the day. They said that gas is a shortage, it's at a premium, the rates are unbearable, and we cannot pay. That's the sort of shortage that one faces during these times. Then the routing, as I said, is through Cape of Good Hope. When this happens, the insurance premium on account of higher tariff rates and higher risk across for these vessels goes sky high. There's something called as war risk premiums being added. The freight rates add the peak season surcharge as well, because these are times when a single container slot is going to cost you, is going to break your back with the rates that they're going to charge you. Then on top of all this, LPG cannot be brought in. There's a shortage. The country which is producing this has been hammered by Iran's missiles. The CNG we cannot get because of problem at the canal. The crude oil shortage, which is also there because most of the Gulf countries have been involved in the war and are facing severe production crunch because their factories have been hit. Now, these are the different uncertainties that we all face. And if this is not a VUCA world, and if these are not the impediments, then what are? Or what are the problems that we face better or more severe than these things? So that is where my earlier panelists mentioned about how a production center or how a factory or how an organization, a chemical factory, faces these impediments and tries to find out solutions. As a service provider, as a 3PL service provider, as a warehouse operator, as a logistic service provider, there are some of the solutions which I can also discuss about, which will help sorting out these crises and find a via media solution to sort out these impediments in the current world. Routing changes, of course, we discussed about that. The alternative routes have to be charted out. Increased freight rates is going to cut down on your margins, is going to decrease your profits, which you already calculated, which you have planned in your finances. The stocking of chemicals. Now, this is a very, very important thing, because unless and until you build up your inventory, having learned about the initial experiences during the war, the rest of the time period, that is 6 months, 1 year, by when the entire situation is going, hopefully will come to a normalcy, you're going to face problems if the inventory is not built up. Now, how do you build the inventory? Gone are those days when we used to think of regionalization for your imports. The procurement managers had a clear-cut mandate in the companies that they should try and procure it globally through a global tender for their imports. Mind you, go to the Gulf countries, go to the Southeast Asian economies whereby they could import all this, but those times are gone due to these geopolitical trends happening. We need to go for nearshoring, And we need to look at diversifying the imports to countries which are very, very nearby, our neighbors, or also from localized suppliers. If required, import substitution be done and reshoring all over again. Find alternative chemicals. Sulfur is short, DAP is short, things are not getting imported. We have fertilizer crisis, the aluminum is short. So everything that you can think about which gets imported from the Gulf countries, namely Qatar, which has been hit, Dubai, where the airports have also been hit, so that nothing can move in by flight, and Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, you name the country in the Middle East from where huge imports and huge tonnage used to move into India has really been hammered and hit. So much so that the government of India and other countries in the Gulf are seriously thinking of laying a submarine pipeline and move the crude or the oil through a pipelines into India. This is one of the strategies. But what about the others? Nearshoring it in country as a whole to Russia, from where the oil gets moved into India, and Venezuela as alternate suppliers. And the moment a truce for, let's say, 10 days, 20 days, 30 days happens, try and import and cash the market with countries like Iran themselves, or for that matter, Qatar, to supply your gas. So this is what is continuously happening, even at the highest levels of the government. And then you talk everything about overseas, you talk about the global scenarios, absolutely fine, gentlemen. But what is happening to your own ports in India? Your own ports, Nhava Sheva, brings in a new problem. Or every alternate week, you'll hear some other new problem. We had a massive problem with drivers going on leave, on holidays. So you had nobody to really move the trailers, move the vehicles across, import containers, piling up within the port. And as a result of which, port congestion started, not only within the port, but also with the vessels waiting for berthing. The berthing time, the berthing allocation became a huge problem. So over and above availability of raw materials, availability of vessels, you also had your own, one of the biggest ports in India, facing this sort of a problem. What do? I'll give you a famous example which happened with us. There was a company which is working from Silvassa, which was importing its containers from Nhava Sheva. Now, remember, friends, through Nhava Sheva, when this problem happened and they had a JIT, remember, just in time. But this JIT world, it whenever you get a time, move the containers immediately. Find out space, find out warehouses, find out adequate inventory to be stored. These are the new trends that happened. So what they did was they moved containers to ICD Tumb through multimodal freight movement, multimodal transport. And from ICD Tumb, it's only 38 kilometers that their plant is at Silvassa. Now, yes, the freight rates may be slightly more, but what you're able to save is by way of demurrage, by way of penal ground rent, and by way of vessel time. And your factory keeps running. So similarly, many of the importers have now started, and exporters also have started using Port of Mundra, just to make sure, because Mundra is equally a very big port. Of course, the only difference being it's a privatized port, whereas Port of Nhava Sheva is into the government. So all the big carriers, the major vessel carriers, do berth in at Mundra as well, and that has a better efficiency rate and a quicker productivity. So therefore, I know many importers and exporters now started to use Mundra during these uncertain times, during these problematic times. So this is something which we need to adopt. At the same time, you also need to look at avoiding port congestion. Now, supply chain visibility becomes extremely important during this port congestion times. Thinking of alternatives, you always talk of AI and digital solution, digital supply chain tools, etc. But can I ask, many of the companies which are working, it's good to invest in AI, etc. But how many of you have real-time tracking? the importers and the exporters included, a real-time tracking of their containers, right from the time it is moving in, let's say from Malaysia or Indonesia into Chennai or into Calcutta, and then on to your industry. How many of you really have the real-time tracking? These are the times when you need that. These are the times when you need alternatives as well. Now, basically, we talk of all these probabilities and all these alternatives. At the end of the day, the solution, the conclusion to this, the analysis which I have done, to this review which was done, is basically as follows. The freight volatility is going to remain for some time, believe me, friends, because even after a truce is arrived, you're not going to have all the things sorted out immediately. It's going to take 6 to 8 months at the bare minimum, and thereafter you need to find long-term strategies to solve such problems, which are going to recur again, which are going to recur every time in the Middle East for sure. Then the port connection or the port congestion, which can arise at times. So alternative ports should be used. Customs complexity, using the software, using the availability of officers, online clearances, etc., need to be really looked into. Then the corridor unreliability, which means whether we move containers directly from the different ports up to Nhava Sheva, and from Nhava Sheva to the ICD points, etc., which corridor suits you best and which can be relied upon, where you have multiple train services moving in. All these points need to be looked at. So in short, it is a geopolitical realignment. It is a friend shoring strategy. Like you move across from ports which are well known to you, which you can depend upon, externally from countries where you know you can really rely upon and you don't have problems in the geopolitical world. And then finally, multimodal logistics really is there to help you. So data governance, trust and accountability, deploying AI, and real-time risk prediction are the tools that you have to depend upon solving the problems as we go ahead. Over to you. Thanks. Thank you once again for giving this opportunity, and thanks everyone.
Thank you so much, Mr. Raju. It was a real reality check that you have given. And rightly said, we live in a VUCA world, a world which is defined by its volatility, its uncertainty, its complexity, and ambiguity. And I think till the time we have Mr. Trump with us, he definitely would love to keep the world in the VUCA mode.
We can keep testing VUCA across.
Absolutely. And add more definitions to it as well.